Maria,
Are we live now?
Maha, are we live? Okay. Thank you, Hala, for having this 20-minute talk with us. We've known each other for so long, I don't know, years, and we're happy to have you for this first Orica Live. This is the first time we do it. This is the first Orica we're gonna have. We're having back after COVID, and we're very excited to have you with us. Thank you very much.
Well, actually, Jumana, thank you for having me. And I'm also very excited. I think I'm excited to be talking to you, but more importantly, also to see that you have been very successful in hosting an in-person event, right? I mean, all eyes on actually people meeting, and here you are in Saudi Arabia with a big audience, so thank you.
Thank you, Hala. We have a couple of questions. We know you have some insights we would like to hear about. Lisa, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Jumana. As you said, Hala, it's really a pleasure to have you with us from Dubai, and we want to, just delve into the market, the KSA market, to understand a bit more about what's going on. So would you mind just setting the scene for us and telling us briefly about the status of the market and specific trends that we're currently witnessing, specifically the luxury segment and domestic tourism? Can you just, give us some background so that we understand what's going on?
Sure, I'd be happy to do that. And perhaps we also deep dive a little bit into what tourism means for Saudi Arabia. So before I address your question, I just wanted to take a moment to actually acknowledge that it is very exciting and transformational times for Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. What does it mean for me? I mean, I've spent the last 15 years learning what the KSA hospitality market is. And suddenly now I'm actually telling myself, you have to unlearn some of what you've learned, and you have to learn again, because we're really moving into something that is not necessarily representative of what it used to be. Obviously, we can capitalize on what Saudi Arabia has been able to establish over the last 20 years. But I think when we look at the future, I would also not probably want to make so much reference to COVID and Corona. I want to make reference to 2019 simply because this is the first year where we can actually measure what did it mean from a tourism perspective to announce the Vision 2030? What does it mean also to ease some regulations pertaining to visa, to women, and other regulations? So at face value, what this did, we've seen 9% increase in visitation between 2018 and 2019, which is impressive. Now, clearly, we have to look at what that number was, and I think it was somewhere around the 45 million trips. But if we are looking to achieve the Vision 2030, which is basically stating two simple factors, we want to grow the GDP contribution from the tourism contribution to GDP from 4% to 10%, and we want to reach 100 million by 2030. The question now is, are we on track to do that? And what is happening in the hospitality industry in Saudi Arabia? So from that standpoint, clearly now 2020 was a tough year. 2021 is a softer year. It's still challenging, but we're seeing a pickup in demand. Specifically as it relates to Saudi Arabia, what it meant 2020 and 2021 is on one hand, capitalizing the local tourism, which historically wasn't a large driver of the economy, and suddenly now it has provided a good base of occupancy. So that is on one hand. On the other hand, what it also did was fuel those large developments. So while there was a plan to develop different markets and to look at bringing in different segments, what this crisis has done perhaps is fuel it. So we're looking at really a serious transformation from what traditionally was pretty much Riyadh being a corporate market with decent occupancy of 55 to 57%, at best 60%, with a lot of panic that there was quite an aggressive pipeline and how are we going to be able to build more hotels? That's up to 2018. Jeddah being a very well-established leisure destination, and moving to Mecca, which is historically a religious destination and very well-established, less so Medina perhaps. What has happened, and I can tell you that clearly over the last 18 months, while we continue as HVS to advise clients in those key markets that I've just described, suddenly we are looking at least 10 secondary markets with very clear plans as how they want to develop them. So we're looking at, I'm just gonna throw out those cities or those markets such as Baha, Abha, Ula, Suda. And each one of those markets is really going to bring in perhaps a differentiated offering, but more importantly, induce its own demand. So what will be interesting to see is that historically, we've relied on certain inbound tourism and very specific segments, which has for a long time given us a good KSA occupancy of 60%, $250 rate, clearly Jeddah topping that with $280, $300, and elsewhere achieving $150. The future now is going to look very different, but that will also rely, as we will talk later, on what developments we're bringing in. And to your point, specifically on the resort market, what we have seen, and again, we only can compare to the more established countries, whether in the GCC or elsewhere. But if I am to do a direct comparison, for example, between the UAE resort market and the KSA resort market, we have 22,000 rooms in luxury resorts in KSA versus 50,000 rooms in the UAE.
Wow.
Clearly, there is a massive opportunity there. Now, traditionally, this was never a focus area for KSA. There will be a catch-up, absolutely, but it's hard to have a fair comparison as to what the resort market has been limited. And that's probably also what I would like, just putting on my advisor hat for a second. That's what I meant by unlearn and learn. Because if we look as to those 5 resorts, how they have historically traded and use them as the benchmark for running every future feasibility study, that is incorrect too. Because we know when you have limited supply and increasing demand, the rate is gonna double and triple, and there's no ceiling. Fast forward many years when there is sufficient supply, while demand continues to grow, these rates will normalize. So it's important also to highlight that, because I'm slightly concerned that a lot of feasibility studies are being done on the basis that there is limited supply. The supply, as we just said, there is around 20,000 keys now announced in that segment. So from 2,000, we're going to grow it to 20,000. Hopefully the demand will be there, but then the rate opportunity to grow is no longer the same as it used to be historically.
Wow, that's quite an interesting...
A lot to digest.
Absolutely.
Right. Yes. But that's also quite common when you're seeing developing markets. I also, again, having worked in Asia and then moved to Dubai, I've seen that. I've seen hotel rooms inventory that are limited, and then over the course of 10 years, they grow by 700%. I also remember when I first arrived in Dubai and the Grand Hyatt was adding 600 keys to the market, 600. That was back then like a huge addition to the current supply. And fast forward, there's 100,000+ keys in the UAE. But again, relating to Saudi Arabia, this is a massive growth. If we take the numbers themselves, it's probably scary and ambitious. However, if the plans to see through the phasing of those developments, and as I said earlier on, induce and create the demand, then naturally there will be sufficient demand in terms of the planned developments.
Well, the signs are very promising from what you're saying, so we'll just have to keep an eye on what's going on.
Sure.
Which for you are the major projects that should be on our watch list?
I'm assuming you're making reference particularly, Jumana, in terms of asset type and development schemes. Is that right? Again, I think there are some clear trends globally, regionally, and more relevant to Saudi Arabia. Because again, when we look at Saudi Arabia, it is it is naturally a diversified kind of product offering. So you've got your very traditional corporate city where the business is being done. So, I mean, we're not necessarily suggesting that Riyadh will no longer be the commercial hub. It will be a very well-established commercial hub with an added element of the leisure segment. And likewise, for instance, Jeddah. But when we start looking outside, and I'm making, again, particular reference to Al-Ula, Suda, and few other destinations, these have a very natural differentiated product offering. While we do projects in Suda at the moment, or in Al-Ula, we are looking at comparables globally. We are looking at this target market, exploring Germany versus, for example, going to Suda for hiking. So we are already looking to compete on the global arena with the product offering. From a hospitality development, my personal view is that we are observing the trend that is much more personalized and differentiated. So we're looking at wellness destinations, at lodges, eco-friendly sports, in addition to clearly the mainstream type of accommodation which you would expect in a city. On the other hand, however, when we start also identifying the quality of the offering, I would like to see, and perhaps that's also in the pipeline, and that typically follows when you are looking to develop your hospitality market, the tendency is to go with 5-star and luxury developments, after which you will see the entry of your budget and mid-scale.
Okay.
My take, however, is for those plans to be achieved, we're looking at mass marketing and it becoming a mass destination where you definitely have to bring these type of asset classes that are more appealing to the price sensitive. Most of the projects currently in the planning are quite niche. And yes, there is a market, but in terms of the sustainability of the offering, my recommendation would be naturally to invest in mid-scale, extended stay products, and more importantly, experiential type of developments, which we just discussed, such as wellness, eco-friendly, and others. And there are great concepts out there, great operators that haven't yet come to this part of the world or to our region, very specialized. They know how to do a farm resort. They know how to do a wellness resort that really takes you on a different trip.
Wow, yes, I totally agree with you. What are the challenges you see or you forecast to achieve this ambitious plan?
I wouldn't necessarily say they're only relevant to KSA. So whatever I'm going to point out is more relevant to any city going through transformation. But with that said, it's also important to highlight what has really supported the growth that we've seen in the last 18 months, whether from a development perspective or visitation. So we did discuss Vision 2030. I think this is quite ambitious with a clear plan. But also we have to give credit to the TDF, which is the Tourism Development Fund, which is really supporting. Oftentimes the bigger question actually is financing. In certain markets, you also want to see that the government is leading the way, not to the extent where the government will necessarily compete with the private sector, but that they are quite encouraging. So the laws should be there to support the private and the foreign investment. But more importantly, I think this fund in particular is what has encouraged many investors to look outside of the key cities where perhaps there will be a situation of oversaturation, but also to develop outside of the market. Now, in terms of the challenges, or what I would call a piece of advice, is sustainability needs to be at the heart of this. And when I talk about sustainability, it is from looking at employment sustainability, but more importantly as well is how do we ensure that as governments, as the government with the private sector are working together, how are we bringing differentiated product to the market rather than cannibalizing the market? And this is why earlier on I made a specific example that we kind of observe, and I've seen in the last 20 years providing advisory services, because a certain asset class is doing well, then a lot of developers and investors take this as the example and they want to move forward with the same. And this is where the risk is. To become even more attractive, you need a very differentiated product offering. There will be room, but I think the sooner the government will also step in to ensure that there is a supply-demand balance, that is very important. My other concern, or what I would highlight, is overspending. Today, the financing is a place we are quite optimistic and ambitious, but we have seen in downturns that the financing becomes even more important. And as we are currently coming out of COVID, we've observed that with assets that there was an overspend, overspecification. So overspending could come in the form of how much you spend, but even sometimes in the areas that are not necessarily utilized. So I also highlight this point as being very important, because ultimately, once you've developed your project, you want to make sure that it yields the value and the returns. And clearly, when it's not doing that, this is when there is fierce competition in markets, and this is where everybody is going to lose. So it won't be one development over the other. And I would probably also, just as a last point, mention that if we're looking to create a destination reaching out to differentiated target markets, we need to also ensure that early on there's a proper phasing of the products we're bringing into the market, how we're reaching those segments, and how these segments are actually blending in together, rather than trying to do too much in one destination, but rather really having a differentiated offering.
That's quite interesting. Lisa, do you have any other questions you want to add before time's flying?
I was going to ask others, but Hala pretty much covered everything in the ones we asked. I did, you did touch upon COVID, Hala. We managed to avoid it for most of the chats, but I suppose the only thing is, like, the current, the fact that we are somewhat in a period of post-pandemic, like a recovery stage. What can you tell us in terms of the current state of the hotel sector? How have they? Are they bouncing back? Have they, put in place certain things to make it a safe destination to visit Saudi Arabia? What is the current situation like?
I mean, we've certainly observed quite a lot of improvement, and in particular for Saudi Arabia. I mean, I've just finalized the valuation index for the Middle East, so it's not just KSA; it is looking at 20 different markets, and clearly that takes into consideration RevPAR that has been achieved in 2020, but also throughout the year to 2021, and more importantly, the NOI, which pretty much dictates the value going forward of any asset. And I was pleasantly surprised that, yes, while there is an expectation that during COVID and even as we are coming out of COVID, that the values are extremely depressed and they have been significantly reduced, which is only fair. But then again, 1 year or 2 years of the reduced income doesn't necessarily take away all your value. But on average, we've also seen that Saudi Arabia, and in particular Riyadh and Jeddah, didn't necessarily lose as much in value as when compared to other cities in the Middle East. Why is that? It's exactly two reasons. One, as we said earlier on, domestic tourism has really helped both Riyadh and Jeddah, for instance, but more importantly, all the corporate demand on the back of Vision 2030 and events such as Orica, where you have such a high attendance. This is fueling demand in the market, and this is helping on the top line. In terms of the bottom line, we have also seen that operations have become much more efficient. So be it those hotels that are operated by a third-party company or that is locally managed, that during COVID, there was clearly a pause, reflect, and take action attitude. And with that take action attitude, there was quite a bit of cost cutting, but streamlining and efficiencies, which we personally also believe has been beneficial, and we should see it continue in the future, which will naturally help the returns on the hospitality investment. So with that combined, improvement in the top line, a reduction in expenses. On average, we've lost 15 to 20% in the value over the last 12 to 18 months, and we are now on the way to recovery. And therefore, in 2 to 3 years' time, values would have recovered, and potentially with all the transformation that is happening in Saudi Arabia, we can possibly in certain markets also see a growth in the value of hotel assets.
Thank you so much. I think we covered a lot. I know we'll see you at AHIC in 10 days' time, and we'll hear some more insightful and interesting analysis coming from you. I would like to thank you. Lisa, do you want anything else? I think our time is already finished.
I think
excellent.
I could listen to you all day, Hala. I think you're good. So
thank you for having me, and well done again for bringing people together in Riyadh.
Well, thank you, Hala. Take care.
All right.
And see you soon.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, Hala.
Bye.
Bye.
يلا. I admit them. جمانة بدك تفوتي؟
Hello. Hello.
Hello Rita, how are you?
Nava.
Fine, fine, all okay. How are you?
Hello. Hello.
Yes. Can you see me?
Yes.
Lucky me, huh? Look at this, who is there? Our Jumana, who didn't want to come to Riyadh this year.
Hello, hello. I was speaking alone. I was muted. How are you, Thomas?
Yeah, that's the way I couldn't understand you well, you know. No, I'm okay. Thank you. Thank you. How are
We
you?
miss you. How are you?
Good, good. Mega busy, super stressful, but all fine. No issue
Okay.
at all. And you look great. Both of you look fantastic.
Yes. Well, we have a nice show running in Riyadh. How did you like it? Did you have the chance to visit or not yet?
I am there. I am there. I'm in the judges' room. Switched them all off in order to have an opportunity to talk to you.
Amazing.
Yeah.
How are you since we last talked before we start in 2 minutes?
All good. All good. Mega busy. I'm flying back tonight. I have a big
Okay.
meeting tomorrow morning, and then I'm coming back after tomorrow again for one day, and it's really crazy.
What are you doing in Riyadh in coming 2 days? You're coming back and forth
No, I have to pass by the hotel show as well, saying hello,
also.
doing a quick one. But basically, I'm so busy with my other government businesses and with my activities. It's really out of a different league in the moment. I was just doing a private yacht. Actually, I just came off 2 days ago, and you know the story. So I got really busy, but it's okay.
Okay. Wait, Anna, je suis bloquée. Can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
But it's strange, as if my picture is.
Hey, your picture. Anna, I'm not seeing your picture.
What do you see?
Black.
I see you. I see you. You look excellent. Now you are black. Now you
No,
are.
I'm back.
Now
I'm
I
back.
Now
see you.
Jumana is live.
Yes. And tell me, Thomas, how is the situation in Jeddah?
Basically, quite good. I mean, in comparison to what we had as this COVID, ISO would say headache, it's okay. Not bad. We have a lot of activities. We are honestly busy every day with something, and it's improving. I mean, they have little cases, so it's okay. Government opens a little bit more for people to visit again, which is good. Definitely, still a lot of restrictions, but hopefully it goes more positive, and it will be going back to a quite normal norm, I would say.
Okay. I would like to talk to you whenever you have some time next week, calmly.
No problem.
I was
Jumana,
hoping
we will start.
Yalla, we'll start. Rita will.
Rita, you make the questions, right? You ask
Yeah.
the questions and I answer.
Yes.
Yes.